All right, our next guest is a reporter for Sports Business Journal, and he covers hockey and soccer. I'm very pleased to welcome Alex Silverman to the Rip City Drive. Alex, first off, thank you for making time to join the show. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Chad.
All right, a lot of things I want to talk to you about, but you know what's great about you is that you've had a chance to sit down with Dundon, and you did an entire layout and piece on him after really turning the Carolina Hurricanes into a force in the NHL. And right now they're in the Eastern Conference Final, which will kick off tonight. They've got a chance to get to the Stanley Cup Finals, which is pretty sweet. But what's been interesting to me, Alex, is that here in Portland over the last month, since he's taken over operations with the Trailblazers, the reporting has been mostly negative in regards to everything, whether it be decisions he's made on the business side, on the basketball side, or this perception that he might be cheap. And so that's why I wanted to bring you on the show so we could do a deep dive on him. But I guess we'll start out with this. His upbringing, and I think a lot of people don't know this, he wasn't born into money, but he actually had to struggle from the start. He's kind of a self-made man. Is that how you would describe him?
Yeah, I don't want to make it seem like he was, poor per se, but, came from kind of, I would say, a lower middle class background in South Jersey. I had the chance to chat with one of his close friends from college, and he described Tom driving a, beat up pickup truck and using a pair of needle nose pliers to adjust the broken dial. And so, yeah, he did not come from money and, has just kind of always been a hustler. I think that's how I'd probably describe his upbringing.
Yeah, hustling. I think that's probably a good way to describe it. So what do you think led to this journey into the sports world? I mean, obviously, he's a guy that likes to get in the business side and try to fix things that are broken. But with sports, what do you think led to that? Was it the competition, his love of sport, or the desire to get in and to try to win?
Yeah, I think he's hyper-competitive, so sports makes a lot of sense. I think he's the kind of person who truly believes that, he has what it takes to outsmart the competition. I think he thinks that if he can go in and do things his way and implement, his culture and his systems, that he's going to have results that are better than average. And I think he's got a passion for sports. Before he took over the Canes, he was invested in Topgolf. He's a big golfer and wanted to get his kids more into golf, so he got involved with Topgolf and really helped take that company to the next level. So yeah, I think it's a passion for sports, his competitive drive, and the belief that he can be successful in sports.
All right, the one thing I've been trying to explain to Trailblazer fans is that, Tom Dundon is not an unknown based on his track record with the Carolina Hurricanes. So, we kind of have an idea of what he's about. But I guess the success there with the Hurricanes is pretty impressive because from my understanding, like when he took over, like that franchise had fallen on hard times, hadn't it?
100%. They've made the playoffs more since he took over the team than they had since they arrived in Raleigh in the mid-'90s. So, they were, long removed from their lone Stanley Cup Finals or Stanley Cup championship in 2005, 2006 when he took over. Long playoff drought. And, the key decision that he made to, take things in the right direction was hiring Rod Brindamore as the coach. And he's just, had great success there. The players really respect him, and he's implemented a system that, has allowed them to get the most out of, a roster that is talented but not star-studded. He like you said, that franchise had fallen on hard times. And, there were a lot of relocation rumors when, before he took over and even after he took over. I had the chance to speak with the previous general manager, Don Waddell, and he acknowledged that Tom, early in his tenure there, when things were not going well and the team was bleeding money, that he was like, would it be better for us to try and do this somewhere else? But ultimately, he's been able to turn it around. He, I think, made a lot of the kinds of moves that have probably irked Blazers fans in his early time there. He said that he wants to put all his money on the ice, and that's involved, not overpaying, in his mind, overpaying broadcasters that have been with the franchise for a long time and letting them walk because they weren't willing to take what he saw as fair market value. And I think that, there was some of those moves had a similar reaction from Hurricanes fans that, some of the early moves in Portland have had from Blazers fans, but he's ultimately won them over based on success on the ice.
Well, don't you think a very simple formula in sports, and you know this, and I'm sure Dundon understands this, but if he eventually has success with the team and they're winning basketball games, my guess would be, based on what I know from all the Trailblazer fans here in town, they care about winning, number one, and if the team is winning and having success, they're going to show up at the arena, support the team, and continue to cheer them on, and they'll probably care a lot less about some of the business decisions that Dundon makes off the court. Don't you see it that way? It's a pretty simple formula in sports. Winning has a way of solving a lot of problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know with there's an arena situation, and there was kind of a similar situation in Raleigh where, they were towards the end of their lease there. And once he, started having success with the team and, when he took over, attendance was dismal. And once the team was performing again, they became successful, and he brought back the old Hartford Whalers branding that the prior owner wasn't really interested in leaning into because he had been the one to move them out of Hartford, and that, was a hot seller. So he, turned the team into a moneymaker, and then once he was able to kind of do that, he committed long-term, has worked with the city to finance a mixed-use development that's going to be taking place over the next decade plus, and renovations to the arena. So, yeah, I think fans care about, of course, keeping the team local and winning. So, if Dundon can do that in Portland, I think, he'll win everybody over.
Isn't it interesting, Alex, how the two situations, when he took over in Carolina and now in Portland, they mirror each other quite closely, where until this season, the Trailblazers had gone through multiple seasons of poor basketball as they were going through, the lottery. And the current lease on the arena, Moda Center, is up in 2030. He's negotiating with the state, the city, and the local council, the county, Multnomah County, to be able to get the funding approved, to be able to get arena improvements and get the facelift to Moda Center so that can be a viable spot for the long term. And he's got a basketball team that, that they're trying to find a way to get back to its winning ways. It just feels and looks a lot like what Carolina was. Maybe not as bad as the Hurricanes, but there's some similarities there.
Yeah, and I guess the question becomes, is the model, the Tom Dundon model that he's deployed in Carolina, replicable in Portland? The one thing that I don't know if he can necessarily pull off is, Rod Brindamore, he hired him, for his first NHL head coaching job, and he's been extremely successful since then. And Dundon credits him more than anyone for the turnaround of the team. And yet he's still, in every contract negotiation since then, has, played hardball with them. He is still, well below market value for an NHL coach, despite leading the Hurricanes to, I think, a top 2 or 3 record since he took over. And a lot of that has to do with Brindamore. He played for the franchise, a legend with the franchise. He wants to be there. And I think as a result of that, he's been able to retain him for far below market value. I don't know if that's something that if they were able to, find the right guy in Portland, I just don't know if that's something that you can do in another market, in another situation.
Yeah, and that's been one of the hot topics, has been his desire to find a coach. There's been reporting that, he's looking to pay someone to coach the team for, roughly $1 to $1.5, maybe $2 million, which is far below market value for an NBA coach. A lot of people in this town, they have this perception that Tom Dundon is cheap. But how would you describe Tom Dundon as an owner? Is he just, I mean, based on what I've read, at least from the people outside of Portland, especially around the Hurricanes, is that he wants to tighten things up on the business side, but he's going to spend and invest in the players, and I would imagine he would do the same here in Portland. Is that an oversimplification, or do you think that's how you would look at it?
I think that's, my understanding of his philosophy. I thought that I read the Oregonian story about the layoffs. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. And there was a quote in there from a team source that the Blazers had, I think they said, the largest business operations staff, or one of the largest business operations staff in the NBA, despite being a lower revenue team, and that's just not something that jives with Dundon's philosophy. He is all about efficiencies, doing. I wouldn't say doing more with less, but not spending just to spend. Making sure he's getting the most out of all of his people. He doesn't really, from what I can understand. I'm not going to pretend I know the guy super well, but I don't think he doesn't care if you've been there a long time necessarily. If he doesn't think that you're going in every day and trying to do the best job that you can do, or if there's somebody who can do your job better. He's very competitive. He thinks that his kind of calculating and analytical philosophy is what makes him more successful than a lot of other people, and I think he tries to apply that to all of his businesses, including his sports teams.
We're talking with Alex Silverman from Sports Business Journal here on the Rip City Drive. He acknowledged in the podcast with Max Kellerman and Rich Paul over the weekend that, he's still learning the NBA game. How hard do you think that adjustment is for an owner to go from one sport to the other? Because the NHL is not the NBA and vice versa. That I would imagine there is a learning curve there, even for someone as sharp as Dundon, right?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I thought that podcast interview, he doesn't do a ton of long-form interviews, so when he does, I definitely try and listen. And I thought that was really, kind of shed a lot of light on his philosophy. But he said that he thought there were more similarities than differences. But yeah, some of the things that he was talking about as differences were so funny that, and there are things that you could totally understand somebody not realizing if they haven't been in it. Like I think there was a controversy over T-shirts versus rally towels. For example, and he was talking about how, we, for hockey, everybody wants to wear their hockey jersey, so we do rally towels. And, it's the kind of thing, like you said, you're not going to really know it until you show up, and, you're going to make some mistakes. And you hope that they're not super costly ones. Obviously, I guess the verdict's out with some of the decisions he's made in terms of the staffing. But yeah, I think there's probably a little bit of a learning curve, but I also do think that there probably are a lot of similarities between the two gigs.
Alex, you've been covering sports for quite a while. How long do you think you have to give an owner before you start to get an idea of what he's all about and whether or not his formula is going to work in this sport? Like, how long does it normally take? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it maybe longer sometimes? Like, how do you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the sort of situation you're coming into. I mean, I think the kind of the number one job for an owner is to make sure the team is secure in its location, has a proper facility, and I'm not going to full disclosure, I don't know all the ins and outs of the Moda Center and Portland politics, but it seems like that is probably his most important task, is to set them up long term to be in a state of the art building and in that market. So that can take years to deal with politicians and get whether if he's chasing public money, that can take a really long time getting approval and local support. So it can take quite a bit of time with that. And then obviously, how long it takes to build a successful front office and roster kind of depends as well on where the team is. I think, the Blazers have some promise. So if you bring in the right, the right coach, that could maybe happen on a better, quicker timetable.
I got one more question for you. It looks like they're going to be able to get a deal done and get the public money for the renovations to the arena, set in place so that the Blazers can be secure here in Portland for a long period of time, which would be nice. But for the local officials, like what type of a negotiator is Tom Dundon? Like, what should they expect through that process? And what were you able to uncover about Dundon when it comes to negotiating and trying to get a deal done for his team or his businesses?
Yeah, I think with the state, with sports facility deals, you have, two ends of the spectrum. You have the guys that are, willing to fund their entire project out of their own pocket. I think of the Chicago Fire, the MLS team. Their owner, Joe Mansueto, is spending $750 million of his own money to build a new stadium. And then you have other owners who know that they have leverage over the local municipality and are going to try and squeeze every dollar of public funding out of them. And even though I do think that in Raleigh, the Hurricanes are the only pro sports team there. So I do think that, Dundon probably had at least some leverage there in terms of negotiations locally. I think he struck a deal that both sides are happy with in terms of, there is some public money involved, but he's still paying taxes on the property and, is contributing a lot of his own money towards the project. I don't have the exact finances handy, but I think he'll expect, like most sports owners expect, the taxpayers to chip in to a certain extent, but I don't think he's necessarily looking for a total handout.
Well, by the way, I know you're a big hockey guy. So do you like Colorado to win the Cup, or do you think Carolina can sneak up? What are you expecting?
Yeah, so I did the bracket before the playoffs started, and I picked Vegas over Carolina. I was a little worried coming into the conference finals about Colorado because they looked so dominant against Minnesota, a team that I thought could beat them. But yeah, Vegas came out strong last night with the Game 1 win, so I'm feeling pretty good about my pre-playoff prediction. So I'm going to stick with the Golden Knights over the Hurricanes.
But it's nice when you open up the Western Conference Final at night in Game 1 when your goalie's on fire, man. That was good work. Jeez.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Vegas is a fun team. I think that's an organization, talking about kind of ownership groups and, taking, maybe not the most traditional philosophy. Those are guys who march to the beat of their own drum and have been extremely successful. So it can definitely happen.
Well, Alex, I really appreciate you taking time to share some insight on Tom Dundon. Keep up the great work at Sports Business Journal. You can follow him on social at Alex M. Silverman. But, Alex, thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Chad.
You got it. There's Alex Silverman, Sports Business Journal here on the Rip City Drive.